Hey guys, welcome back to Drawn into Narnia. This is episode 6, and we're going to be talking about leadership as shown through Prince Caspian. So I'm going to start with the character who is in power when this book starts, and that is King Miraz. Now, Miraz is a bad leader, let's just say, to put it simply and mildly. He's someone who seized power through a combination of manipulation, some coercion, I believe, and also just flat out murdering his enemies. So yeah. So we can tell he is quite intelligent and he knows how to use this. But he also has a massive temper that is a major downfall for him. We see it causing problems throughout the entire book. The most notable example, though, is the fact that he literally dies because of this. He accepts a challenge to a fight that he really has no reason to accept. There's no point in him accepting Peter's challenge because his army could easily best the Narnians just based on the fact that his army is much bigger and much more well trained and has much better weaponry. He accepts it based on pride because two of his lords insult him. So I guess it's a combination of anger and pride. He has a very, very strong ego. And of course, this ego shows itself in all kinds of ways. He is racist against anyone who isn't human. He is very, very demeaning to his nephew because child. And he also shows no faith in anyone really other than himself. He asks Glazelle and Caspian for their advice, but then ignores it when he doesn't like it. Or actually worse than that, he doesn't ignore it, he goes directly against it to spite them, which of course they know and use that. And that of course is not good. In terms of his actual leadership skills, he keeps Narnia under control, but you know that it's through tyranny. It's made very apparent that his entire kingdom is miserable. No one likes living with him as king, with the possible exception of some of his lords who are in his good graces and have more power as a result. But even them, Glazelle and Caspian expressly state that they were two of the people who helped put him in power, and they're starting to chafe against his rule a little bit, and they end up going against him. So he's not a good leader. He just isn't. Like, yeah, he keeps Narnia under control, but there's nothing, that's really the only thing he has going for him, and the methods that he uses to do that kind of negate the fact that he's able to control Narnia in terms of points on his side. In some ways, I would actually say the White Witch is almost a better leader because at least she inspires some form of loyalty. She's worse than Miraz in terms of just a person, but I think Jadis is a slightly better leader. And keep in mind, when I say slightly better leader, I'm saying that in the context of they're both still horrible people and do absolutely horrific things as leaders. I'm not condoning it, just saying Jadis is better at actually controlling things because it takes an actual fight from external forces and her death to stop her, whereas with Miraz, his own people betray him because they hate him as a leader. And also because they just want power for themselves. But you know. Now, contrasted with Miraz is, of course, his nephew, Prince Caspian, well, who really is called King Caspian for most of the book, but Caspian. And he is pretty much the polar opposite of Miraz in terms of leadership. He has little to no political power at this point. He has a name, or he has a title, but that actually doesn't hold any clout with the Telmarines. And really, it doesn't hold a lot of clout with the Narnians either. It does hold some, like for instance, Truffle Hunter the Badger. He sides with Caspian because he believes that a son of Adam should be king of Narnia, and that Caspian has shown the qualities that would qualify him to be a good leader. But by contrast, you also have other old Narnians who wanted to kill Caspian at first. So yeah, he has basically no political power. All of his power comes from his personality and his good intentions, and the fact that, you know, some Narnians recognize this in him and decide, yeah, like he's someone we could follow. You could argue that some of his power comes purely from the fact that he is a son of Adam, but I kind of would contrast that with, if it was just based on that, then I'm pretty sure the Narnians would also be fine with Miraz being king. So they also are taking a certain amount of who he is as a person and kind of how they meet him into consideration. As for how he actually goes about leading, he's much more personable than Miraz is. You can tell that he really is trying to get to know his subjects and that he takes their thoughts and beliefs into consideration. This continues on into the later books as well. He does show several flaws in his leadership throughout the series. In this book, the main one is that he's very insecure in his abilities. In some ways, this actually ends up helping because it keeps his ego small. So he doesn't fall into the trap that Miraz has, which is another contrast with his uncle. But that being said, it does still kind of cause some issues at times. You can see that some of the other Narnians are not quite so eager to trust him. Overall, I'd say he copes with this really well because he deals with really fierce opposition from some people, mainly Nickabrick, and he comes out of it okay, and in the end, he ends up being a really, really good king. Now, the next leader is one of the most talked about leaders in the Chronicles of Narnia, and that is Peter. High King Peter the Magnificent. And just full disclosure, some of the thoughts I'm going to be discussing here are either derived from or inspired by the book Inside Prince Caspian by Devin Brown, which I highly recommend. It's a really, really interesting read. It's kind of a study of Prince Caspian. It's really, really good. Now, when we meet Peter in this book, it's been a year Earth time since he left Narnia, or fell out of Narnia, kind of. It was accidental, so you know. And he has been living on Earth as a child with his brother and sisters, which has had some interesting effects. We don't see a lot of it on Earth, because they are barely on Earth in this book, but when we see him in Narnia, he's kind of struggling with his position as a leader. You can tell that he's kind of like, okay, I have to be the High King, I have to be the one in charge, therefore I must lead. And you can see him struggling about whether to give up that power or to claim it. He oftentimes defers to Trumpkin in situations where he really doesn't need to. Basically because Trumpkin is older than him in a lot of ways. Partly because Trumpkin has experience in Narnia, which is a valid reason, incidentally. But Peter tends to do it a bit too much. He seems to be eager to pass the power to someone else because he doesn't know how to handle it anymore. He feels like he should have that power, so he is kind of sort of trying to claim it, but he's also kind of pushing it away. This is most notable in the instance where Lucy claims to have seen Aslan and says, no, we should go up. And Susan and Trumpkin both say, no, like, down makes more sense, we want to go down. And then they all vote, and Peter is the deciding vote, and he chooses down because he's basically feeling pressured into it. And this comes up again in the scene so shortly afterwards when Lucy says, I've seen Aslan again, I have to go. And you can see Peter not really knowing what to do. He kind of sort of just goes along with whatever the others decide in that scene, if I'm remembering correctly. And then in the scene when he sees Aslan for the first time in this book, he apologizes because I've been leading them wrong ever since we started. And that's a major turning point for him, because for the rest of the book, he is in full High King Peter mode, and he is ruling magnificently, no pun intended. We see him going down to talk to Caspian and the others, but he takes the time to kind of gauge the situation before he engages. But that being said, when things get serious, he jumps in right away, because, yeah, we can't let this escalate any farther. And yeah, blood is shed, but there's really no way that could have been avoided at this point. Or if it would have been avoided, then something else probably would have happened later, so yeah. But I think the most important instances we get regarding Peter's leadership capabilities in this book is how he's contrasted with Caspian and Miraz, the other two most obvious leaders in the book. In the case of Miraz, Peter is stepping forward to put himself into harm's way. He's going to be the only person on the Narnian army who is in physical danger in this fight. Essentially, he's taking on the burden to protect the rest of the Narnians. He is fighting to protect the Narnians. Miraz is fighting for the sake of his ego. And in contrast to Caspian, Caspian is very inexperienced as a leader at this point, which is fair. He's described as a kid. He might be mid-teens. I would say he's probably around 15, 14. Just looking at how old he is in Voyage of the Dawn Treader. But he has had some leadership, and you can see that Peter is very much trying to kind of nurture that ability in Caspian in addition to stepping up as a leader. He is providing Caspian with an example, but also with a mentor, because you see him essentially giving Caspian the confidence he needs without the ego. At the end of this book, Caspian still believes he isn't actually ready to lead, but he's a little bit more confident. And that is largely, I think, due to Peter's influence, because Peter sees him and immediately speaks to him as an equal, or a near equal. He speaks to him kind of as Edmund's equal. Peter still is High King, but you can see he really values Caspian's input and thoughts. And he directly says, we did not come to take you out of your place, but to put you into it. This is one of the first things Peter says to Caspian. They have just fought a fight, so the lights come back on, and Peter kind of takes stock of what's happened. He goes, okay, looks like all our enemies are dead, and then he goes, oh, and you must be King Caspian. So first of all, he's directly referring to him by his title, and then Caspian just kind of goes, yeah, but I have no idea who you are. Well, he doesn't really know what to do or say. He's not antagonistic towards Peter because, well, one, he stepped in to help them, and two, Trumpkin's right there vouching for him. But he's kind of like, who are you and how did you get here? And then Trumpkin introduces him as, it's the High King, King Peter. And immediately you can see Caspian kind of going, oh, okay, now we're all formal here. He says, your majesty is very welcome. So very, very formal greeting. And Peter actually responds in kind. He says, "And so is your majesty. I haven't come to take your place, you know, but to put you into it." So right there at the beginning, he is kind of setting the definition of their relationship. There's this undercurrent of, yes, I technically have more power than you, but I'm not here to suppress you. I'm here to give you the power you need and to put you in place so you can lead these people properly. And that's very much what Peter does. For the rest of the book, he is the one in charge and he is kind of directing all the commands, but he always is talking to Caspian and exchanging ideas. And you can really see Caspian kind of coming into his own as he watches Peter go through this as a leader. So Peter's journey in this book is from someone who isn't really sure if they can be a leader anymore to someone who is not only a leader, but is mentoring another leader. And that's especially appropriate given how this story ends for Peter. Now, just briefly, I want to discuss Lucy as a leader, because she's not a typical leader, not remotely. She isn't a leader in the sense of actually directing people's actions. She is a leader in terms of inspiring people. She is the youngest member of the cast, I would say, with the exception of Caspian's cousin, who is a newborn, but that doesn't count because he never actually appears on screen, or page, I guess. I would guess she's probably a preteen here. I'm sorry, I haven't looked up how old she would have been going to boarding school for the first time, but that's my estimate on how old she would be. So, she is younger than everyone else in the cast, which means that traditionally she would be more of a follower, especially since Lucy does seem to be very much a little sister. She does seem to like to listen to what her older siblings say and do. And she is very independent, but she's not someone who asserts what she wants and tells them unless she feels very, very strongly about it. In the first book, we saw this with her asserting that no, Narnia is real, and we have to stay to help Tumnus once they're in Narnia. In this book, we see her going, "No, I saw Aslan, he was there." And then when they overrule her, she just kind of goes, "Fine, like, okay." And then, of course, she's right, and they all have to go back and do what she said. But one thing I really, really like is when she sees Aslan for the first time, which incidentally is one of my favorite scenes in this book. It is so sweet and wonderful, and I love it. He asks her, like, "Why didn't you come anyway?" And Lucy kind of has this moment of, "Oh yeah, I didn't have to do what the others wanted. I could have come on my own because I knew it was right." And that's what she does. When she goes back to confront them about it, she says, like, "This is what happened. Even if you don't come with me, I have to go." And that ends up kind of spurring the others to finally just be like, "Okay, fine, we'll go with you." And that is a very, very vital point, because that's how they find Caspian's camp. And also, if they hadn't intervened, Caspian very well could have died, and Dr. Cornelius, and maybe even Truffle Hunter. I don't know. Because their arriving on time was what prevented the fight between Nickabrick's group and Caspian's group from, exploding into something way worse than it was. So she isn't a leader in the traditional sense, but she does have moments where she kind of steps into that position a little bit. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. I think I'm probably finished with Prince Caspian for now, but right now we will be moving on to Voyage of the Dawn Treader in the next video. If you have any questions or comments regarding this, please let me know. And do you guys have any suggestions for different topics I could cover in this series? I can't guarantee that I will do them, but I would be happy to have suggestions. So have a wonderful day, and thank you for watching. See you later.